And I'm at the hour. So, hello everyone. If I can manage to get myself up. What's going on? Everything's wrong, Okay, that's better. So, what's happening? Right, okay, so, I'm back from my one day off. It was strange and scary not being here and having nothing to do. But I am now back. What am I doing? First things first. Hello everyone. My name is SkitterSkreetch. You can call me Skitter. And I am, as I always am, a rat who is trapped inside of this cursed library, where I read books. And today I've got some books to read for you. Specifically, after we finished The Seawolf, I asked on the Bird website which of a number of longer novels that I've sort of had my own, like I know where they are, I could get them, you'd be interested in seeing, and no one chose any of them, so I can only assume you don't want to know about any of them. So I sort of panicked, and then I went through a little pile that I'd seen of Katherine Mansfield, who I know nothing about, but who has a number of stories in here, so that counts. Right, what's going on? Where am I? I have not moved. Ooh, why am I floating? What's going on? Okay, so everything is a little bit wrong. I don't know why. I don't even know why I'm here. This is the wrong place. I'm going to go to the main library. Everything's very strange. Right, so what's going on is that I have these books here. Lamp, please. Okay. Lamp has stopped shifting me about through main force of telepathy. Gonna take a minute to breathe. Okay, so what I was saying is, yeah, no one seemed interested in any of the long books, so I thought I'd do some more short ones. I got these Katherine Mansfields, and we're going to read those, and that's the end of it. And I don't know why I'm doing such a complicated, convoluted introduction. But yeah, we got 5 of them. None of them is particularly long. They vary quite a bit, so we're going to go. I'll just go through them and see how we get on, I suppose. But yeah. As always, if I miss anything, or you didn't catch something I've said, and you want me to go back over something, let me know, and I'm happy to do that. I'll stop after each one and do a little bit of commentary, probably. And yeah, I mean, yeah, same as ever, really. Assuming you've been here before, you know the drill. So, let's start with Bliss, shall we? Yeah. Bliss. Although Bertha Young was 30, she still had moments like this when she wanted to run instead of walk. To take dancing steps on and off the pavement, a bowl and hoop to flow some. Whoop. Oh, hello. Yeah, I'm good. Nice to see you. Yeah. I'm doing pretty well, yeah. Thanks for asking. Well, we just started. We are literally about to start on the first of our stories tonight, so if you want to stick around and hear us out, cool. Glad to have you. Yeah, we're reading some Katherine Mansfield. That's going pretty well, you know. Went out in the library, got some of these books, avoided a couple of beasts, you know, standard. Pretty chill, Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, if you're not familiar, I don't do every day. I try and do most days, but the nature of what I do is I read books, and so if I do them for a long period, I sort of strain my voice quite a lot. So I have to make a point to take a break every now and then. And of course, I've got to go get the books, which sometimes takes some time. But yeah, I try and do a little bit most days, but then sometimes I'll be like, yeah, I'll read a whole long thing in a single sit, and I'll strain my voice out. I guess Wednesday last now I did half of The Seawolf in one sitting, which was 6 hours of straight reading. That's just a lot of talking to do all at once. But yeah. Anyhow. Yes. Yeah, today we've got some short ones, so hopefully we'll get on better. Bliss. Although Bertha Young was 30, she still had moments like this when she wanted to run instead of to walk. To take dancing steps on and off the pavement, a bowl and hoop, to throw something up in the air to catch it again simply. Or to stand still and laugh at nothing simply. What can you do if you're 30 and turn the corner of your own street? You're overcome suddenly by a feeling of bliss, absolute bliss, as though you'd suddenly swallowed a bright piece of the late afternoon sun that burned in your bosom, sending out a little shower of sparks into every particle, and every finger and toe. Oh, is there no way you can express it without being drunk and disorderly? How idiotic civilization is. Why be given a body if you have to keep it shut up in a case like a rare, rare fiddle? No, that about the fiddle is not quite what I mean, she thought, running up the steps and feeling under her bag for the key. She'd forgotten it as usual, and rattling the letterbox. That's not what I mean because... Thank you, Mary, she went to the hall. Is nurse back? Yes'm. And has the fruit come? Yes'm, everything's come. Bring the fruit up to the dining room, will you? I'll arrange it before I go upstairs. It was dusky in the dining room and quite chilly. All the same, Bertha threw off her coat. She could not bear the tight clasp for another moment, and the cold air fell on her arms. But in her bosom there was still the bright glowing place, that shower of little sparks were coming from it. They were almost unbearable. She hardly dared to breathe for fear of fanning it higher, and yet she breathed deeply, deeply. She hardly dared look in the old cold mirror, but she did look, and it gave her a woman, radiant with smiling, trembling lips, with big dark eyes and air of listening and waiting for something divine will happen, that she knew must happen infallibly. Mary brought in the fruit on a tray, and with it a glass bowl and a blue dish, very lovely, with strange sheen on it, as though it had been dipped in milk. Shall I turn on the light, Mum? No, thank you, I can see quite well. There were tangerines and apples stained with strawberry pink, some yellow pears smooth as silk, some white grapes covered with a silver bloom, and a big cluster of purple ones. These last she had brought to tone in with the new dining room carpet. Yes, that did sound far-fetched and absurd, but it was really why she had brought them. She had thought in the shop, I must have some purple ones to bring the carpet up to the table, and it seemed quite the sense at the time. When she finished with them, and she had made 2 pyramids of the bright round shapes, she stood away from the table to get the effect. And it really was most curious. The dark table seemed to melt into the dusky light, and the glass dish and the blue bowl to float in the air. This, of course, in her present mood, was so incredibly beautiful, she began to laugh. No, I'm getting hysterical, and she seized off her bag and coat and ran upstairs to the nursery. Nurse sat at a low table giving little Bea her supper after her bath. The baby had on a whim on a white flannel gown and blue white woolen jacket, and her dark fine hair was brushed up into a funny little peak. She looked up when she saw her mother and began to jump. Now, my lovely, eat up like a good little girl, said the nurse, setting her heavy lips in a way that Bertha knew, and that meant she had come into the nursery at rather the wrong moment. Has she been good, Nanny? She has been a little sweet all the afternoon, whispered Nanny. We went to the park, and I sat down in a chair and took her out of the pram, and a big dog came along and put its head down on my knee, and she clutched its ear and tugged it. Oh, you should have seen her. Bertha wanted to ask if it wasn't rather dangerous to let her clutch a strange dog's ear, but she did not dare to. She stood watching them, her hands by her side like the poor little girl in front of the rich little girl with the doll. The baby looked up at her again, stared, and then smiled so charmingly that Bertha couldn't help crying. Oh, Nanny, do let me finish giving her supper while you put the bath things away. Well, and she ought to be changed hands while she's eating, said Nanny, still whispering. It unsettles her. It's very likely to upset her. How absurd it was. Why have a baby if it has to be kept not in a case like a rare, rare fiddle, but in another woman's arms? Oh, I must, she said. Very offended, Nanny handed her over. Now don't excite her after her supper. You know you do, ma'am. Have such a time with her. Thank heaven. Nanny went out of the room with the bath towels. Now I've got you to myself, little precious, said Bertha as the baby leaned against her. She ate delightfully, holding up her lips with a little spoon and then waving her hands. Sometimes she wouldn't let the spoon go, and sometimes, just as Bertha had filled it, she waved it away to the 4 winds. When the soup was finished, Bertha turned around to the fire. You're nice. You're so very nice, said she, kissing her warm baby. I'm fond of you. I like you. And indeed she loved little Bea so much. Her neck as she bent forward, her explicit toes as they shone transparent in the firelight. All her feeling of bliss come back again and again. She didn't know how to express it. What to do with it. You're wanted on the telephone, said Nanny, coming back in triumph and seizing her little Bea. Down she flew at Harry. Oh, is that you, Bear? Look here, I'll be late. I'll take a taxi and come along as quickly as I can, but don't get me up and put back 10 minutes, will you? All right? Yes, perfectly. Oh, Harry? Yes? What had she to say? She had nothing to say. She only wanted to get in touch with him for a moment. She couldn't absurdly cry, hasn't it been a divine day? What is it? Rapped out the little voice. Nothing. Entendu, said Bertha, and so I hung up the receiver, thinking how much more than idiotic civilization were. They had people come to dinner. The Norman Knights, a very sound couple. You were about to start a theatre, and she were awfully keen on interior decoration. A young man, Eddie Warren, who had just published a little book of poems and who everybody were asking to dine, and a find of Bertha's called Pearl Fulton. What Miss Fulton did, Bertha didn't know. They had met at the club, and Bertha had fallen in love with her, as she always did fall in love with beautiful women who had something strange about them. The provoking thing was this, though they had been about together and met a number of times and really talked, Bertha couldn't make her out. Up to a certain point, Miss Fulton were rarely wonderfully frank, but to the certain point, the certain point were there, and beyond that she would not go. Was there anything beyond it? Harry said no, Bertha had a dullish and cold, like all blonde women, with a touch of perhaps anemia of the brain. But Bertha wouldn't agree with him, not yet at any rate. No, the way she has of sitting with her head a little on one side and smiling has something behind it, Harry, and I must find out what that something is. Most likely it's a good stomach, answered Harry. He made a point of catching Bertha's ears with replies of that kind. Liver frozen, my dear girl, pure flatulence, or kidney disease, and so on. For some strange reason, Bertha liked this, and almost admired it in him very much. She went in the drawing-room and lighted the fire, and picking up the cushions one by one that Mary had disposed so carefully, she threw them back on the chairs and couches. That made all the difference. The room came alive at once. As she was about to throw the last one, she surprised herself by suddenly hugging it to her passionately. But it did not put out the fire in her bosom. On the contrary, the windows of the drawing-room opened onto a balcony overlooking the garden. At the far end, against the wall, there were a tall, slender pear tree in fullest, richest bloom. It stood perfect as though becalmed against the jade-green sky. Bertha couldn't help feeling, even from this distance, that it had not one single bud or a faded petal. Down below in the garden beds, the red and yellow tulips, heavy with flowers, seemed to lean up upon the dusk. A grey cat, dragging its belly, crept across the lawn, and a black one in shadow trailed after. The sight of them, so intent and so quick, gave Bertha a curious shiver. What creepy things cats are, she stammered, and she turned away from the window and began walking up and down. How strong the jonquil smelled in the warm room. Too strong? Oh no. And yet, as though overcome, she flung down on the couch and pressed her hands to her eyes. I'm too happy, she murmured. And as she seemed to see on her eyelids the lovely pear tree with its wide open blossoms as a symbol of her own love. Really, she had everything. She were young. Harry and she were as much in love as ever, and they got on together splendidly, and were really good pals. She had an adorable baby. They didn't have to worry about money. They had this absolutely satisfactory house and garden, and friends, modern fill-in friends, writers and painters and poets, or people keen on social questions, just the kind of friends they wanted. And then there were the books, and there was music, and she had found a wonderful little dressmaker, and they were going abroad in the summer, and their new cook made the most superb omelettes. I'm absurd. She sat up, but she felt quite dizzy, quite drunk. It must have been the spring. Yes, it was the spring. Now she was so tired she could not drag herself upstairs to dress. A white dress, a string of jade beads, green shoes and stockings. It wasn't unintentional. She thought of this scheme hours before she stood at the drawing-room window. Her petals rustled softly into the hall, and she kissed Mrs. Norman Knight, who had taken off the most amusing orange coat with a procession of black monkeys round the hem and up the fronts. Why is the middle class so stodgy, so utterly without sense of humour, my dear? It's only by a fluke that I'm here at all. Norman being the protective fluke, but my darling monkey so upset the train that it rose to a man to simply ape me with its eyes. Don't laugh, I wasn't amused. That I should have loved, no, just stared and bored through me and through. But the cream of it was, said Norman, pressing a large tortoise-shell monocle into his eye. You don't mind me telling this face, do you? In their home and among their friends they called each other Face and Monk. The cream of it was when he, having full fed, turned to the woman beside her and said, Haven't you ever seen a monkey before? Oh, yes, Miss Norman Knight joined in the laughter. Wasn't that too absolutely creamy? And a funnier thing still was that now her coat was off, she did look like a very intelligent monkey, who had even made the yellow silk dress out of scrap banana skins. And her amber earrings, they were like little dangling nuts. It's a sad, sad fall, said Mark, pausing in front of Little Bee's perambulator. When the perambulator comes into the hall, and he waved the rest of the quotation away. The bell rang. It was lean, pale Eddie Warren, as usual, in a state of acute distress. This is the right house, isn't it? He pleaded. Oh, I think so. I hope so, said Bertha brightly. I have had such a dreadful experience with the taxi man. He was most sinister. I couldn't get him to stop. The more I knocked, the harder he called, the faster he went. And in the moonlight, the bizarre figure with the flattened head crouching over the little wheel. He shuddered, taking off an immense white silk scarf. Bertha noticed that his socks were white too, most charming. But how dreadful, she cried. Yes, it really was, said Eddie, following her into the drawing room. I saw myself driving through eternity in a timeless taxi. He knew the Norman Knights. In fact, he would go on a right play for NK when the theatre scheme came off. Well, Warren, how's the play? Said Norman Knight, dropping his monocle and giving his eye a moment in which to rise to the surface before it was screwed down again. And Miss Norman Knight. Oh, Mr. Warren, what happy socks. I am so glad you like them, he said, staring at his feet. They seem to have got so much wider since the moon rose. And he turned his lean, sorrowful young face to Bertha. There is a moon, you know. She wanted to cry. I'm sure there is, often. He really was a most attractive person. The sober-faced, crouched before the fire in her banana skins, and saw a monk smoking a cigarette and saying as he flickered his ash, Why did the bridegroom tarry? Oh, there he is now. Bang went the front door, open and shut. Harry shouted, Hello, you people, down in 5 minutes, and they heard him swarm up the stairs. Bertha couldn't help smiling. She knew he loved doing things at high pressure. What, after all, would an extra 5 minutes matter? He would pretend to himself that the matter would be on measure, and then he would make a great point of coming in the drawing room extravagantly cool and collected. Harry had such a zestful laugh. Oh, she appreciated it in him, and his passion for fighting, for seeking it in everything that came up against him, as another test of his power, and his courage, that too she understood. Even when it made him just occasionally, to other people who didn't know him, well, a little ridiculous perhaps. There were moments when he rushed into battle when no battle was. She talked and laughed and positively forgot until he had come in, just as she had imagined, that Pearl Fulton had not turned up. I wonder if Miss Fulton's forgotten. I expect so, said Harry. Is she on the phone? Ah, there's a taxi now. And Bertha smiled with a little air of proprietorship that she always assumed with her women finds that were new and mysterious. She lives in taxis. She'll learn to fat if she does, said Harry coolly, ringing on the bell for dinner. Frightful danger for blonde women. Harry, don't, warned Bertha, laughing up at him. Come another tiny moment and they waited, laughing and talking, just a trifle too much at their ease, a trifle too unaware, and then Miss Fulton, all in silver, with a single fillet binding her pale blonde hair, coming smiling, her head a little on one side. Am I late? Oh, not at all, said Bertha. Come along. And she took her arm and they moved into the dining room. What were there in the touch of that cool arm could fan start blazing the fire of bliss that Bertha did not know what to do with. Miss Fulton did not look at her, but then she seldom looked at people directly. Her heavy eyelids lay upon her eyes, and a strange half-smile came and went upon her lips as though she lived by listening rather than by seeing. But Bertha knew suddenly, as if the longest, most intimate look had passed between them, as if they had said to each other, You too, that Paul Fulton, stirring the beautiful red soap in the grey plate, were feeling just what she was feeling. And the others, Face and Mug, Eddie and Harry, their spoons raised and fallen, dabbing their lips with their napkins, crumbling bread, fiddling with their forks and glasses and talking. I met her at the Alpha show, the weirdest little person. She not only cut off her hair, but she seemed to have taken a dreadfully good snip of leg and arm and neck, and her poor little nose as well. Why isn't she very near with Michael the man who wrote Love and False Teeth? He wants to write a play for me. One act, one man, so to commit suicide. There's all the reason why he should and why he shouldn't. And just as he made his mind either to do it or not, the curtain. Not a half bad idea. What's he going to call it? Stomach trouble? I think I've come across the same idea in the Little French Review, quite unknown in England. No, they didn't share it. They were dears, and she loved having them there, at her table, and giving them delicious food and wine. In fact, she longed to tell them how delightful they were, and what decorative group they made, how they seemed to set one another off, and how they reminded her of a play by Chekhov. Harry was enjoying his dinner. It was part of his, well, not his nature exactly, and certainly not his pose. It's something or other. Talk about food and the glory and shameless passion for the white flesh of the lobster, and the green of pistachio ices, green and cold like the eyelids of Egyptian dancers. When he looked up at her and said, Bertha, this is a very admirable souffle, she almost could have wept with childlike pleasure. Oh, why did she feel so tender towards the old world tonight? Everything were good, were right. All that happened seemed to feel again her brimming a cup of bliss. And still, in the back of her mind, there was a pear tree. It would be silver now in the light of the poor dear Eddie's moon. Silver as Miss Fulton, who sat there burning a tangerine in her slender fingers that were so pale, a light seemed to come from them. Well, she simply couldn't make out, or miraculous, or how she should have guessed Miss Fulton's mood so exactly and so instantly. But she never doubted for a moment that she were right, and yet what had she to go on? Less than nothing. I believe this has happened very rarely between women. Never between men, thought Bertha. While we are making coffee in the drawing room, perhaps she will give a sign. What she meant by that she did not know, and what would happen after she could not imagine. While she thought like this, she saw herself talking and laughing. She had to talk because of her desire to laugh. I must laugh or die. When she noticed Face's funny little habit of tucking something down the front of her bodice, as if to keep a tiny secret order nuts there too, Bertha had to dig her nails into her hands, so not to laugh too much. They were over at last, then. Come and see my new coffee machine, said Bertha. We only have a new coffee machine once a fortnight, Harry. Face took out her arm this time. Miss Fulton bent overhead and followed after her. The fire had died down in the drawing room, to a red flickering nest of baby phoenixes and Face. Don't turn up the light for a moment, it's so lovely. And down she crouched by the fire again. She were always cold, without her little red flannel jacket, of course, thought Bertha. At that moment, Miss Fulton gave the sign. Have you seen the garden? Said the cool, sleepy voice. This was so exquisite on her part that all Bertha could do was to obey. She crossed the room, pulled the curtains apart, and opened the long windows. There, she breathed. And the two women stood side by side looking at the slender flowering tree. Although it was so still, it seemed like the flame of a candle would stretch up, a point, quiver in the bright air, and grow taller and taller as they gazed, almost to touch the rim of the round silver moon. How long did they stand there? Both, as it were, caught in that circle of unearthly light, understanding each other perfectly, creatures of another world, and wondering what they were to do in this one with all this blissful treasure that burned in their bosoms and dropped in silver flowers from their hair and hands. Forever? For a moment? And did Miss Fulton murmur, yes, just that? Or did Bertha dream it? Then the light was snapped on, and Face made the coffee and Harry, and said, My dear Miss Knight, don't ask me about my baby, I never see her. I shan't feel the slightest interest in her until she has a lover. And Mug took his eyes out of the conservatory for a moment, and then put it under glass again. And Eddie Warren drank his coffee and set down the cup with a face of anguish as though he had drunk and seen a spider. What I want to do is ignore the young men I show. I will believe London is simply teeming with first of unwritten plays. What I want to say to them is, here's theatre, fire ahead. You know, my dear, I'm going to decorate a room for Jake.
Ah, the rat!
Abbe! Hey, good to have you. We're just getting through the first of the stories, so you're in good time. What I want to say to them is, here's the theatre, fire ahead. You know, my dear, I'm going to decorate a room for the Jacob Nathans. Oh, I'm so tempted to do a fried fish scheme, with the backs of the chairs shaped like frying pans and lovely chip potatoes embroidered all over the curtains. The trouble with our young mighty men is they're still too romantic. You could put out the sea out of being seasick and wanting a basin. Well, why won't they have the courage of those basins? A dreadful poem about a girl who was violated by a beggar without a nose in a little wood. Miss Fulton sank into the lowest, deepest chair, and Harry handed round the cigarettes. And the way he stood in front of her, shaking the silver box and saying abruptly, Egyptian, Turkish, Virginian? Oh, that's okay. Appreciate you dropping by, Abbe. I always appreciate it. Egyptian, Turkish, Virginian, they're all mixed up. Bertha realised she not only bored him, he really disliked her. And she decided from the way Miss Fulton said, no, thank you, I won't smoke, that she felt it too and was hurt. Oh, Harry, don't dislike her. You're quite wrong about her. She's wonderful, wonderful. And besides, how can you feel so differently about someone who's means so much to me? I shall try to tell you when we're in bed tonight what has been happening, what she and I have shared. At these last words, something strange and almost terrifying darted into Bertha's mind. And this something blind and smiling whispered to her, soon these people will go, and the house will be quiet, the lights will be out, and you and he will be alone together in the dark room, the warm bed. She jumped up from her chair and ran over the piano. What a pity someone does not play, she cried. What a pity someone does not play. For the first time in her life, Bertha Young desired her husband. Oh, she'd loved him. She'd been in love with him, of course, in every other way. It's just not in that way. And equally, of course, she'd understood that he were different. They discussed it so often. It had worried her dreadfully at first to find that she was so cold. After a time it had not seemed the matter. They were so frank with each other, such good pals. They were the best of being modern. But now, ardently, the word ached in her ardent body. Was this what the feeling of bliss had been leading up to? But then, my dear, said the Norman Knight, you know our shame, we're the victims of time and train. We leave in Hampstead. It's been so nice. I'll come with you into the hall, said Bertha. I loved having you, but you must not miss the last train. It's awful, isn't it? Have a whiskey night before you go? No, thank you, old chap. Bertha squeezed her hand for that as she took it. Good night, goodbye, she cried from the top step, feeling the stealth-words were taking leave of them forever. When she got back in the drawing room, the others were on the move. You can come part way on the way in my taxi. I shall be so thankful not to have my face another drive alone after my dreadful experience. You can get a taxi from the rank just at the end of the street. You won't have to walk more than a few yards. That's a comfort. I'll go and put on my coat. Miss Fulton moved towards the hall, and Bertha was following when Harry almost pushed past. Let me help you. Bertha knew that he would repenting his rudeness. She let him go. What a boy he was in some way, so impulsive, so simple. And Eddie and she were left by the fire. I wonder if you have seen Bilk's new poem called Table d'Hôte, said Eddie softly. It's so wonderful, in the last anthology. Have you got a copy? I'd so like to show it to you. It begins with an incredibly beautiful line. Why must it always be tomato soup? Yes, said Bertha, and she moved noiselessly to a table opposite the drawing-room door, and Eddie glided noiselessly after her. She picked up the little book and gave it to him, and they had not made a sound. While he looked up and she turned her head towards the hall, and she saw Harry with Miss Fulton's coat in his arms, and Miss Fulton with her back turned towards him and her head bent. He tossed the coat away, put his hands on her shoulders, and turned her violently to him. His lips said, I adore you, and Miss Fulton laid her moonbeam fingers on his cheeks and smiled a sleepy smile. Harry's nostril quivered. His lips curled back in an hideous grin while he whispered, Tomato, and with her eyelids Miss Fulton said, Yes. Here it is, said Eddie. Why must it always be tomato soup? It's so deeply true, don't you feel? Tomato soup is so dreadfully eternal. If you prefer, said Harry's voice, very loud from the hall, I can phone you a cab to come to the door. Oh, no, it's not necessary, said Miss Fulton, as she came up to Bertha and gave her her slender fingers to hold. Goodbye. Thank you so much. Goodbye, said Bertha. Miss Fulton held her hand a moment longer. Your lovely pear tree, she murmured. Then she was gone, with Eddie following, the black cat following the grey cat. I'll shut up shop, said Harry, extravagantly, cool and collected. Your lovely pear tree, pear tree, pear tree. Bertha simply ran over to the long window. Oh, what is going to happen now? She cried. The pear tree were lovely as ever, and full as flowers, and still. And that's the end of Bliss. Wow, that was hauntingly beautiful. Have a drink to give me a moment to collect my thoughts. Right, so I think, well, what'd you say? I've described that as an account of a person having a manic episode, I think. The sort of overwhelming amount of joy, the impossibility of it all is distressing. And the fact that it maintains even through finding out her husband's having an affair, or seeming to find out. Why all the mundane things become magical. Why everything becomes overwhelmingly perfect. Even as things fall apart around you. It's a disturbing thought. It'd throw you off, really, not to be able to understand when things was bad. Not to be able to recognise the nature of a thing. Strange, isn't it? A strange idea. Gives me the heebie-jeebies a bit, really. But it was so beautifully told. That's the worst part, really. Things are falling to pieces. It's a dreadfully dull dinner party. The husband's out late and he's having an affair and they're with boring people who they don't care about. But we're just proper society people. It's all wonderful. It's all beautiful. It's a good trick, that. Adds to it. Mansfield seems pretty good to me so far from that one, but I don't know if I like her. You know what I mean? I mean, the phrasing is good. Maybe she's not using it like that, it'll be better. We'll see how we get on, shall we? We'll see how we get on. Gonna have another swallow of water because my throat is feeling a little rougher than I expected. I might I gave it a day's rest, and I gave it another one not too long before that. I've got to take better care of it, really. Maybe we don't get through all 5 of these tonight. How long is the rest of them? Let's have a quick look, shall we? So that one were 19 pages. Of the rest of them, one of them's 30, one of them's 21, one of them's only the 9, or well, 8 even. And the last one is also pretty short. Yeah, the last one's only 6 pages actually, so a couple of them are very short, but a couple of them are as long or longer than that. The next one's one of the short ones. In fact, the next 2 are the 2 short ones, and the other 2 are longer. So I think what I shall do is I shall do these next 2 with their commentary, and then we'll see how my voice is, and if it's not feeling great, then we'll stop and we'll do the other 2 another night. It's annoying, really, my voice being the limiting factor. It doesn't feel like it should be, you know? It feels like it should be a mental thing. Like, the capacity to sit and read and to digest stories for hours on end should be what's limiting me, but it's just my throat. I do the right stuff, I got lozenges and I drink honey tea and I do all this stuff and I rest it and that, but you just... I don't know. You're sort of maddening how the physical limits the rest of you, doesn't it? Gets to me. And again, maybe it's better than the alternative. Hey, you could argue that's a sort of movement we're taking here, really. Our last book were about the physical overcoming the mental, and here we've got the mental overcoming the physical. At least to a certain extent. But yeah, I'm rambling. Let's my head's all over the place. Let's read The Escape. Yeah. The Escape. It was his fault, only and solely his fault, that they had missed the train. What if the idiot ought to go tell people who refused to produce the... What if the idiot ought to go tell people who refused to produce the bill? And that simply because he hadn't impressed upon the waiter at lunch that they must have it by 2 o'clock? And the other man would have sat there and refused to move until they handed it over. But no. His exquisite belief in human nature had allowed him to get up and expect one of these idiots to bring it to their room. And then when the voiture did arrive, while they were still, oh heavens, waiting for change, why hadn't he seen the arrangement of the boxes so they could at least have started the movement and started the moment the money had come? Had he expected her to go outside, to stand under the awning in the heat and point out with her parasol? Very amusing picture of English domestic life. Even when the driver had been told how fast she had to drive, he paid no attention whatever, just smiled. Oh, she groaned. If she'd been a driver, she could have just stopped smiling and herself at the absurd, ridiculous way he were urged to hurry. And she sat back and irritated his voice. Allez, vite, vite, and begged the driver's pardon for troubling him. And then the station, unforgettable, with the sight of the jaunty little train shuffling away and those hideous children waving from the windows. Oh, why am I made to bear these things? Why am I exposed to them? The glare, the flies, while they waited, and he and the station master put their heads together over the timetable trying to find the other train, which of course they wouldn't catch. The people who gathered round, the woman who held up a baby with that awful, awful head. How to care I care. Feel as I feel, never be saved anything. Never know for one moment what was to. Her voice had changed. It was shaken now, crying now. She fumbled with her bag and produced from it its little more scented handkerchief. She had put up her bare hand as though she was saying to somebody else, "And no, my darling." She pressed the handkerchief to her eyes. The little bag, with shiny silvery drawers open, lay on her lap. You could see her powder puffs, her rouge stick, a bundle of letters, a file of tiny black pills like seeds, a broken cigarette, a mirror, white ivory tablets with lists on them that had been heavily scored through. He thought, in Egypt she would be buried with those things. They had left the last of the houses, those small straggling houses, bits of broken pot flung among the flower beds and half-naked hens scratching around the doorsteps. Now they were mounting a long, steep road that wound around the hill and over into the next bay. The horses stumbled, pulling hard. Every 5 minutes, every 2 minutes, the driver trailed the whip across them. His stout back was solid as wood. There were boils on his reddish neck, and he wore a shining new straw hat. There were a little wind, just enough wind to blow satin of the new leaves on the fruit trees, and stroke the fine grass, down the silver of the smoky olives. Just enough wind to start in the front of the carriage, a whirling, twirling snatch of dust that settled on their clothes like the finest ash. When she took out her powder puff, the powder came flying over them both. "Oh, the dust," she breathed, "the disgusting, revolting dust." And she put down her veil and lay back as if overcome. "Why don't you put up your parasol?" he suggested. "You're on the front seat." And he leaned forward to hand it to her. At that, she suddenly sat upright and blazed it again. "Please leave my parasol alone. I don't want my parasol. Anyone who's not utterly insensitive would know that. I'm far, far too exhausted to hold up a parasol. With a wind like this tugging it, put it down at once," she flashed, and snatched the parasol from him, tossed it in the crumbled hood behind and subsided, panting. Another bend of the road, down the hill, and there come a troop of little children, shrieking and giggling, little girls with sun-bleached hair, little boys in faded soldiers' caps. In their hands they carried flowers, any kind of flowers, grabbed by the head, and these they offered, running beside the carriage. Lilac, faded lilac, greeny white snowballs, one arum lily, and a handful of hyacinths. They thrust the flowers in their impish faces into the carriage. One even flew into her lap, a bunch of marigolds. Poor little Mouse. He had his hands in his trouser pocket before her. "Oh, for heaven's sake, don't give them anything. Oh, how typical of you. Horrid little monkeys. Now they'll follow us all the way. Don't encourage them. You would encourage beggars." She held the bunch out of the carriage with, "Well, do it when I'm not here, please." He saw the queer shock on the children's faces. They stopped running, lay behind, and they began to shout something, and went on shouting until the carriage rounded another bend. "Oh, how many more are there before the top of the hill is reached? The horses haven't trotted once. Surely it isn't necessary for them to walk the whole way." "We shall be there in a minute now," he said, and took out his cigarette case. At that she turned round towards him. She clasped her hands and held them against the breast of her. Her dark eyes looked immense, imploring beyond the veil. Her nostril quivered. She bit her lip, and her head shook with a little nervous spasm. When she spoke, her voice was quite weak and very calm. "I want to ask you something. I want to beg something of you," she said. "I've asked you hundreds and hundreds of times before, but you've forgotten. It's such a little thing. But if you know what it meant to me." She pressed her hands together. "You can't know. No human creature could know and be so cruel." And then slowly, deliberately gazing at him with those huge sombre eyes, "I beg and implore you for the last time that when we are driving together you won't smoke. If you could imagine," she said, "the anguish I suffer when the smoke comes floating across my face." "Very well," he said, "I won't forget." They put the case back. "Oh no," she said, and almost began to laugh, and put the back of her hand across her eyes. "You couldn't have forgotten, not that." The wind came blowing stronger. They were at the top of the hill. "Oh, yip, yip, yip," cried the driver. They swung down the road that fell into a small valley, sighted the sea coast at the bottom of it, and then caught over a gentle ridge on the other side. Now their houses again, blue shuttered against the heat, the bright burning gardens with geranium carpets flung over the pinkish walls. The coastline was dark on the edge of the sea, a white silky fringe just stirred. The carriage swung down the hill, bumped, shook. "Yep," cried the driver. She clutched the side of the seat, she closed her eyes, and he knew she felt this were happening on purpose. This swinging and bumping, this were all done, and they were responsible for it somehow. Despite her, just because she had asked if they couldn't go a little faster. Just as they reached the bottom of the valley, there was one tremendous lurch. The carriage nearly overturned, and he saw her eyes blaze at him, and she positively hissed, "I suppose you're enjoying this?" They went on. They reached the bottom of the valley. Suddenly she stood up. "Cocher! Cocher! I looked at you!" She turned around and looked in the crumpled hood behind. "I knew it!" she exclaimed. "I knew it! I heard it fall, and so did you at that bump." "What? Where?" "My parasol! It's gone! The parasol that belonged to my mother! The parasol that I prized more than—" She was simply beside herself. The driver turned round, his grey, broad face smiling. "I do held something," he said simply and gaily, "but I thought that Monsieur and Madame said nothing. There, you hear that? And you must have heard it too, so that accounts for the extraordinary smile on your face." "Look here," he said, "it can't be gone. If it fell out, it will be there still. Stay where you are, I'll fetch it." She saw through that. Oh, how she saw through it. "No, thank you." And she bent her spiteful, smiling eyes upon him, regardless of the driver. "I'll go myself. I'll walk back and find it, and trust you not to follow. For," knowing the driver did not understand, she spoke softly, gently, "if I don't escape from you for a minute, I shall go mad." She stepped out of the carriage. "My bag?" He handed it to her. "Mesdames préfères." but the driver had already swung down from his seat and was seated on the parapet reading a small newspaper. The horses stood with their hanging heads. It was still. The man in the carriage stretched himself out, folded his arms. He felt the sun beat on his knees. His head was sunk on his breast. Hish, hish, sounded from the seat. The wind sighed in the valley and were quiet. He felt himself lying there, an hollow man, a parched, withered man, as if he were, as it were, of ashes. And the sea sounded, hish, hish. It was then that he saw the tree. He was conscious of its presence just inside the garden gate. It was an immense tree, with a round, thick silver stem and a great arc of copper leaves that gave back the light, and yet was sombre. There was something beyond the tree, a whiteness, a softness, an opaque mass half hidden, with delicate pillars. As he looked at the tree, he felt his breathing die away, and he became part of the silence. They seemed to grow, seemed to expand in the quivering heat, until the great carved leaves hid the sky, and yet were motionless. And from within its depths, or from beyond, there came the sound of a woman's voice. A woman was singing. A warm and untroubled voice floated up on the air. They were all part of the silence, as he were part of it. Suddenly, as the voice rose, soft, dreaming, gentle, he knew that it would come floating to him from the hidden leaves, and his peace was shattered. What was happening to him? Something stirred in his breast, something dark, something unbearable and dreadful pushed in his bosom, and like a great weed it floated, rocked. It was warm, stifling. He tried to struggle, to tear at it. In the same moment, all were over. Deep, deep he sank in the silence, staring at the tree and waiting for the voice to come floating and falling, until he felt himself enfolded. In the shaken corridor of the train it was night. The train rushed and roared through the dark. He held them with both hands to the brass rail. The door of the carriage were open. Do not disturb yourself, monsieur. He will come in and sit down when he wants to. He likes. It is his habit. Oh, oui, madame, je ne peux pas, je suis un peu souffrant, mais neuf. Oh, but my husband is never happy when he is travelling. He likes roughing it. My husband. The voice murmured. They were never still. But so great was his heavenly happiness as he stood there. He wished he might live forever. I wonder if I might be wrong about the first text. I assume that it was an account of someone having a manic episode. It is now occurring to me that Katherine Mansfield might just be a much happier person than I am, or might have been a much happier person than I am. And all of our stories are like this, about terrible things happening but it not mattering because actually the world is lovely and it's very happy and all the time is good. And if that's the case, I suspect I will never like any of her stories, because I cannot relate to them at all. But maybe it's not. I must admit, I didn't enjoy this one much just in general either. Like, I can see the elements to it. You've got this unpleasant character, and the whole situation, the blame being thrown around and all that. But it just feels very sort of confused in the sort of narrative of it. Like, I'm not entirely following exactly what's happening. It seems to jump around a bit. I don't know. I like a slow reflective prose, but there's not a lot of it here. Only the sort of moment with the tree, which... There's something to that, but we're very brief. I have my drink of water now. Yeah, my throat's really not feeling up to it. It's not as scratchy and bad as it could be. I could keep going probably 2 hours if I needed to, but I think I will up myself if I do, so. We'll do this next one, Taking the Veil, and hopefully it will bring us up to the hour mark, which feels like a good amount to be done. And then I can, I think I'll call it there. Stream the day. My throat's hurt, and I have someone come and try and sell me things. Say that. Never really good. Hey, Abby. I appreciate you being there. 5 stream streak too. That is remarkable. I appreciate you immensely. Actually, that means you were here for all of the Seawolf too. Right, you are then. We should drink deeply of life's cool waters. I thank and commend you enormously. Yeah. Now what are we doing? Nah, it's fine. What you call it? I know time don't work out for everyone. I just appreciate you being there. Most people, like, the thing I've noticed about doing this is most people don't come to the streams. Like it's a very weird way of having things happen, but I will go and like go to bed after I do these or whatever, and I'll come back the next day, and I'll have 20 or 40 views on the VOD because people just want to listen to the story all in one piece and not have to worry about it. Which, you know, I get that. It's I am very much doing the format of an audiobook, and I know that whenever I listen to an audiobook, I don't like to worry about, you know, interrupting it or not being able to pause it as I go off or whatever. I appreciate you being here. It's good to have someone to talk to. Keeps me from feeling like I'm going mad. Trapped down here beneath the earth, far from the sun, in this cursed library full of beasts. But I'm not mad. I swear it. And the magic lamp will swear to it too, even though you can't hear him talk and only I can do that. I'm perfectly sane. Yeah. Isn't that right, lamp? And... oh. Okay, so the magic lamp that only I can hear talk says that I may not be perfectly sane. Yeah, well, I mean, no, he says I might be experiencing, what was it? Okay, he said something about burnout and, post-traumatic, yeah, it's probably fine. Lamp's a wizard, he doesn't know about mental health. Why should I listen to him? Just because he's here and can talk to me, and no one else can? It's fine. Everything's fine. But yeah. Let's go. Yeah, I'm gonna... what am I gonna do? I'm gonna read the one more and then I'm gonna call it for the day, so we'll push on with that. And then things will be good. Everything will work out and be fine. Well... oh! I just realised I forgot to do something, because I'm an idiot. Didn't do this at the start of the stream. I always try and call out everyone who follows me with thanks, so... got to give a thanks to Lord Impidimp, who has followed me since the last stream. I don't know why so many people follow me when I'm not streaming. But I mean, I guess I've answered my own question already about the old people don't watch me while I'm live. So yeah, one away from 25. That's a big number. Important. But yeah. What are we doing? What are we doing? Where are we? What is this place? All right, the Cursed Library books. That's what we're doing. Of course, that makes sense. So yeah, we'll do one more, and then we'll call it. So I don't have my thing. Thank you, Abbe. Oh, you've got the the improved thing. You've been here really regularly. I appreciate that. But yeah, we'll do taking the veil. Oof, can't focus today. We'll do taking the veil, then we'll stop because I don't want to hurt my throat, and then tomorrow we'll come back with. We'll either do the rest of these tomorrow, or I'll see if I can find another novel that isn't one of the ones I said on Twitter because no one was interested in those, and we'll try doing that tomorrow. That is what we'll do. That's the plan, and I'm sticking to it probably. But I'm going to start reading this book now because otherwise I will go off on another tangent and I will completely lose my place. Just a sort of night for it. I'd say maybe the moon's full, but I don't know because I'm miles and miles underground, far from any sign of it. I just know people are weird when the moon is full. Oh, something odd is going on at the edge of the library. There's flashing lights there, and I think no, yeah, it's just a weird beast. Okay, that's fine probably. Anyway. Not that we're worried about, right. Taking the veil. It seemed impossible that anybody should be unhappy on such a beautiful morning. Nobody was, decided Edna, except herself. The windows were flung wide in the houses. From within there come the sound of pianos, little hands chased after each other and ran away from each other, practicing scales. The trees fluttered in sunny gardens, all bright with spring flowers. Street boys whistled, a little dog barked, people passed by, walking so lightly, so swiftly they looked as though they wanted to break into a run. Now she actually saw, in the distance, a parasol, peach-coloured, the first parasol of the year. Perhaps even Edna did not look quite as unhappy as she felt. It is not easy to look tragic at 18, when you were extremely pretty with the cheeks and lips and shining eyes of perfect health. Above all, when you were wearing a French blue frock and your new spring hat trimmed with cornflowers. True, she carried under her arm a book bound in horrid black leather. Perhaps the book provided a gloomy note, but only by accident. It was the ordinary library binding. For Edna had made going to the library an excuse for getting out of the house, and to realise what happened, decided somehow what was to be done now. An awful thing had happened. Quite suddenly at the theatre last night, when she and Jimmy were seated side by side in the dress circle, without a moment's warning, in fact she had just finished a chocolate almond and pressed the box to him again, she had fallen in love with an actor. But fallen in love. The feeling was unlike anything she had ever imagined before. It wasn't in the least pleasant, it was hardly thrilling, unless you can call the most dreadful sensation of hopeless misery, despair, agony and wretchedness thrilling. Combined with the certainty that if that actor met her on the pavement after, while Jimmy were fetching the cab, she would follow him to the ends of the earth, at a nod, at a sign, without giving another thought to Jimmy or her father and mother, or her happy home and cunt as friends again. The play had begun fairly cheerfully. That was the chocolate almond stage. Then the hero had gone blind. Terrible moment. Edna had cried so much she had to borrow Jimmy's folded, smooth-feeling handkerchief as well. Not that crying mattered. Old Rose were in tears. Even the men blew their noses with a loud trumpeting noise and tried to peer at their programme instead of looking at the stage. Jimmy, most mercifully dry-eyed, for what she had done without his handkerchief, squeezed her free hand and whispered, "Cheer up, darling girl." It was then she had taken the last chocolate almond to please him and passed the box again. Then there had been that ghastly scene with the hero alone on the stage in a deserted room at twilight, and a band playing outside and the sound of cheering coming from the street. He had tried, how painfully, how pitifully, to grope his way to the window. He had succeeded at last. There he stood holding the curtain while one beam of light, just one beam, shone full on his raised sightless face, and the band faded away into the distance. It was absolutely, it was simply, in fact from that moment Edna knew that life could never be the same. She drew her hand away from Jimmy's, leaned back and shut the chocolate box forever. This at last was love. Edna and Jimmy were engaged. She had her hair up for a year and a half. They had been publicly engaged for a year. But they had known they were going to marry each other ever since they walked in the botanical gardens with their nurses and sat in the grass with a warm biscuit each and a piece of barley sugar each for their tea. It was so much an accepted thing that Edna had worn a wonderfully good imitation of an engagement ring out of a cracker all the time she was at school. And up till now they had been devoted to each other. But now they were over. It was so completely over that Edna found it difficult to believe Jimmy did not realise it too. She smiled wisely, sadly, as she turned into the gardens of the convent of the Sacred Heart and mounted the path that led through them at New York Street. How much better to know it now than to wait until after they were married. Now it was possible that Jimmy would get over it. Now it was no use deceiving herself, he would never get over it. His life was wrecked, was ruined, that were inevitable. But he was young. Time, people always said, time might make just a little difference. In 40 years, when he were an old man, he might be able to think of her calmly, perhaps, but what did the future hold for her? Edna had reached the top of the path. There, under a new-leaf tree, hung with little branches of white flowers, she sat down on a green bench and looked over the convent flower beds. In the one nearest to her there grew tender stocks with a border of blue shelf-like pansies, with at one corner a clump of creamy freesias, their light spears of green criss-cross over the flowers. The convent pigeons were tumbling high in the air, and she could hear the voice of Sister Agnes, who had given a singing lesson. Ame sounded the deep tones of the and the ame, they were echoed. If she did not marry Jimmy, of course, she would marry nobody. The man she was in love with, the famous actor, Edna had far too much common sense not to realise would never be. It was very odd. She didn't even want it to be. Her love was too intense for that. It had to be endured silently. It had to torment her. It was, she supposed, simply that kind of love. "But Edna," cried Jimmy, "can you never change? Can I never hope again?" I was sorry to have to say it, but it must be said. "No, Jimmy, I will never change." Edna bowed her head, and a little flower fell on her lap, and the voice of Sister Agnes cried suddenly, "Ah, no," and the echo came, "Ah, no." In that moment the future was revealed. Edna saw it all. She was astonished. It took her breath away at first. But after all, it could be all natural. She would go into a convent. Her father and mother would do everything to dissuade her in vain. As for Jimmy, his state of mind hardly bears thinking about. Why can't they understand? How can they add to her suffering like this? The world is cruel, terribly cruel. After a last scene, when she gives her jewellery and so on to her best friends, she so calm, they so broken-hearted, into a convent she goes. Now, one moment, the very evening of her going is the actor's last evening at Port Willen. He receives by a strange messenger a box. It is full of white flowers. There is no name, no card, nothing. Yes, under the roses, wrapped in a white handkerchief, Esna's last photograph, with written underneath, "The world forgetting, by the world forgot. The world forgetting, by the world forgot." Edna sat very still under the trees. She clasped the black book in her finger as though it were a missile. She texted the name of Sister Angela. Snip, snip, all her lovely hair is cut off. Will she be allowed to send one card to Jimmy? It's contrived somehow. And in a blue gown with a white headband, Sister Angela goes from the convent to the chapel, from the chapel to the convent, with something unearthly in her look, in her sorrowful eyes, and in the gentle smile with which she greets the little children who run to her. A saint. She hears it whispered as she places the chill, wax-smelling corridors. A saint. And visitors to the chapel are told of the nun whose voice is heard above all the other voices, of her youth, her beauty, of her tragic, tragic love. There is a man in this town whose life is ruined. A big bee, golden furry fellow, crept into the freezer, and the delicate flower leaned over, swung, shook, and when the bee flew away it fluttered still as though it were laughing. Happy, careless flower. Sister Angela looked at it and said, "Now it is winter." One night, lying in her icy cell, she hears a cry. Some stray animal is out there in the garden, a kitten or a lamb, or whatever little animal might be there. Up rises the sleepless nun, all in white, shivering but fearless. She goes and brings it in. The next morning, when the bell rings for matins, she is found tossing in high fever and delirium, and she never recovers. In 3 days all is over. The service has been said in the chapel, and she is buried in the corner of the cemetery reserved for the nuns, where there are plain little crosses of wood. Rest in peace, Sister Angela. Now it's the evening. 2 old people leaning on each other, come over to the grave and kneel down sobbing. Our daughter, our only daughter. Now there comes another. He is all in black. He comes slowly. When he is there and lifts his black hat, Edna sees to her horror his hair is snow white. Jimmy. Too late. The tears are running down his face. He is crying now. Too late, too late. The wind shakes the leafless trees in the churchyard. He gives one awful bitter cry. Edna's black book fell with a thud to the garden path. She jumped up, her heart beating. My darling, no, it's not too late. It's all been a mistake, a terrible dream. Oh, that white hair, how could you have done it? She has not done it. Oh heavens, oh what has happened? She is free, young, and nobody knows her secret. Everything's still possible for her and Jimmy. The house they have planned may still be built. The little solemn boy with his hands behind his back watching them plant the standard roses may still be born. His baby sister. But when Edna goes as far as his baby sister, she stretches out her arms, as though the little love came flying through the air to her, and gazing at the garden, at the white sprays on the trees, at those darling pigeons blue against the sky, and the convent with its narrow windows, she realises that now, at last, for the first time in her life, she had never imagined any feeling like it before. She knew what it was to be in love, but in love. That's the end of the piece. That was an odd one. The idea of love as cruelty has occurred to me before. I mentioned it back when we were reading the Jack Londons, specifically with Call of the Wild and White Fang. The idea that love in an animal, love of a person, becomes a dependence on them and is a cruel thing. And this is sort of the same sort of love, the slavish devotion immediately. And it is a terrible thing to have to completely lose yourself to. The way she reacts to this is very strange. This whole discarding of the old life, the imagining of a different thing. Not even because of it, not even to go to it, but just because of the idea that it invalidates everything. People have strange ways of understanding the world, or looking at things. People make plans for their old lives, and then the moment something doesn't conform with those plans, they turn them aside, cast them to pieces. It's strange to me, really. I don't understand it. But the funny thing is that the thing that I don't understand isn't so much the casting aside of all the plans of one thing, but the making of those plans in the first place. It seems wild to me that people seem to think they understand their own lives so well that they can control them. They have some idea of how things are going to turn out enough that they can plan for the future. The idea that you should have a perfect plan for your life and then have a single moment tear it all asunder and ruin it forever isn't shocking to me. Because obviously, shocking things happen all the time. You never know what's going to happen. The world is a constant string of surprises and changes. Every day I'm down there, I'm surprised and horrified by something new. But the idea of seeing all that, of seeing everything be the way it is, of seeing the world with unclouded eyes, and still deciding, yeah, I'm certain enough, I can plan for the future, I can see how I want things to be and I can make them that way. That seems to be hopelessly naive, hopelessly idealistic. I think I stand by the judgment that Katherine Mansfield is a much happier person than I am, or was a much happier person than I am. I think it comes across in her writing, and I think it throws me, really, because I do not relate with her writing at all. Which is a shame, because her prose is very nice, and she's a great gift for imagery, especially natural imagery, but it just takes me out of things a little bit. I don't know. I think it also hurts that at least the two shorter of those didn't have clear narratives, which they may have to be sort of grasping at certain points. Sort of felt me tumbling, which I mean, maybe it's just a problem with the shorter ones she does, and the longer ones will have more of it. We'll find out when we read them. But for now, I can feel my throat on the edge of starting to ache again, and I need to let it rest really. So I'm not going to push myself. I'd like to. I wish I had more to read. I wish I could read the rest that I have got. I wish a whole bunch of other things, but things are what they are. And they're not what they're not. And that's the nature of things. You can't plan around it, you can't change it. If you don't got a book in your library, you can't read that book. Simple fact. Well, I guess, actually, I think you can read those books nowadays, because most people have, like, phones and tablets and stuff where they can go and, you know, look into things and read. Actually, maybe this isn't as apt a metaphor or something, but I think most people have those now. I just don't, because I'm not using technology. I've got a lamp here who does all this stuff by magic, but you know. What was my point? I don't know that I had a point. Yeah. Katherine Mansfield. So far seems like she's a good writer, but has a fundamentally different worldview than I do, which I find quite distracting as I read the work. Anyway, what am I saying? What am I saying, Lord? My head's in a weird place tonight. It's in a very strange place indeed. I think it becomes something of I don't know. I mean, I've noticed it for a little while. My head does get like this sometimes. I know it does. You just, what is it? I don't know. You have a day where your sort of head doesn't sit right and you can't think straight and you're distracted. And you know, these come and go for me. I'll be like this for a little while. It's part of why I can't make plans, you know? I mean, I know a lot of people post schedules and I don't have the stuff to make like fancy ones, but I could, you know, tear up some paper and write them down and send them up. But if I made a schedule, I wouldn't stick to it. If I make a plan more than a day ahead of it, I just won't. I know that about myself. Hey, Ivy. You got a terrible sense of time and we're just calling it for the day because my throat's given out. But I'm doing my sad little reflection on things at the end of the day. So if you want to stick around for that, you're very welcome.
Ah, the rat!
Hello, Ivy. Good to have you. But yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, Katherine Mansfield. Good author. Don't agree with me particularly. My throat not holding up as well as I'd like it to. It's a shame. I'd like to read more. I'm drinking plenty of water and I'm, you know, taking things with honey and I've got lozenges and that. I don't know. Weirdly, I don't think it's the reading that's actually done it. I did a big session of recording a couple of days back for some covers, and I got a little bit extra with it. With you'll have to keep a watch out for my cover of Back to Black by Amy Winehouse, which will come out probably in a couple of weeks. And I really got into that one, and I did hurt my throat quite badly doing it. So, yeah. But I just need. That's not a musket. That's a bolt action rifle. I got that during the Londonathon. Lamp gave me a gun with a single bullet, and I didn't know why, and I was scared. But then a single bot come along during the entirety of my Londonathon, and was promptly shot. You know, that's just the way things are. Anyway, we've got. What am I doing? We got a muffin stream. We should go see Lamp. Hey, Lamp. What do you think's going on? Why did you give me that gun? Okay, Lamp says he gave me the gun and the single bullet purely because it was funny that he didn't know a bot was coming. Okay, well, I've lost some faith in Lamp, but you know, what's that? What else is there? Everything is ever changing. You never know what's going to happen. You can make no plans, for the plans will change. You can't decide you're going to marry a young man and live your whole life expecting that, because you might fall in love with an actor up on a stage and be terribly in love, working in love. And then you can't plan to go live in a nunnery because you'll break the art of your promo love, and then that will break you, even from beyond the grave. Lord, oh Lord, the world is changeable. Everything is strange, and no one understands anything. But yeah. Maybe. I mean, Lamp can make them. I mean, I don't think it would work. Like Lamp is a powerful magical being. Like you guys don't see it because Lamp is the one maintaining the stream architecture. So if like something weird happens, he like has to go offline to do it. Where is it? There we are. This book here. This book wasn't always a book. This was a thing that broke into the library through the wards that were broken or were damaged at the time, and then just sort of. Like it was a bunch of tentacles and eyeballs and shapes that didn't make sense, and yeah, Lamp made that into a book, and then he put these chains around it, and then it has been here ever since. And like, I don't know. I mean, Lamp brought me back from the dead. I was dead like a couple of weeks ago, like for a couple of hours, and he just brought me back. Lamp is terrifying. Like Lamp. I used to think Lamp was a god. Lamp told me to stop calling him a god because apparently gods are a very limited form of what did he called it? Consensus architecture. Apparently gods are a limited form of consensus architecture, and he is not that limited. That's what Lamp is. So I mean, we could try and shoot him. I don't think he would care especially, but he would probably be angry at me, and then I wouldn't get cheese for a couple of days. Yeah, you not here for that? I was doing what was it? I think they're up here actually, so I guess I can show you. Yeah, this one. I was reading Lamp, please put me down. Okay, that one over there, The Signal One by Charles Dickens. I brought it in, and I thought it was normal. Ran through it. Turns out that is one of the Screamy books. That's one of the magic books, and it's like a cursed copy of The Signalman. That the story itself is to do with like the idea of hauntings in the future, and so it made me into a ghost. Like, just completely got rid of my physical body. I was a ghost for, I think, like an hour and a half. Yeah, that was the one time like stream stuff was happening while magic was going on, because Lamp just let me be a ghost for a little while. As he called it a lesson. I don't know what I was supposed to learn. And also, apparently, this curse was significant enough that while we were streaming it through the system architecture, it crashed Discord at the same time, which, that's a thing that can happen. Apparently, these magical books can be cursed enough that they, like, bring down, like, internet architecture. I don't know, like, something about the servers dying. I don't know. But yeah, and then I was dead for, like, an hour and a half, and then I read through these books while I was dead, because, you act out the sort of things you did in life, and apparently, them being magic meant they had like Lamp calls it an animatic. He says astral presence. That's it. There's some sort of astral presence, so you can interact with them. And then that was like, okay, you've learned your lesson. Brought me back to life. Fully reconstructed my body out of aether and nothing. He said something about using the sacred flame, and then he drove like some nails. You see those little dots there on the sort of corners of it. Yeah. As you can see all four. Those aren't like part of the book. Those are nails made of the same metal that Lamp is made out of. He just drove them in there, and apparently it's fine now. And that's just a thing that happened, and I have to live with that. I died, and Lamp brought me back from beyond the veil of death. And he can create matter out of nothing, and I don't understand Lamp. Like, from my understanding of the world, I think Lamp could do literally anything. Like, Lamp sometimes feels like an Old Testament god, but he just doesn't. And he said, like, apparently he's limited to scope, and apparently there's stuff about, like, the library needs to be repaired, and there's stuff that needs to go in the central wards, and all this stuff that I don't understand. But within, like, this specific domain, within, like, the light that he casts, he is functionally omnipotent, and it scares me. I'm not in control of my own life. Like, I joke about, and, like, you know, there's beasts and stuff. Within the scope of the like area that Lamp controls, which is where I live and do all of my business and have all of my books and everything is, I am not in control of things. This is, you know, this is his domain. I just live here and work for him. And I don't even have a choice in that because he's the only source of food down here. I'm spiraling. I'm realising how bad things are, and I'm spiraling. Okay. Deep breath. Gonna have a drink of cold water. Ooh. Okay. Everything is fine. Nothing is any worse than it has been before. I have just taken a moment to reflect on the nature of certain things that are maybe out of context and also maybe in context quite alarming. But that's fine. Everything is good. I'm calm. I'm present. I'm not currently being eaten by any beasts. That's the important thing. But yeah, so to answer your question, Ivy, yes, Lamp did give me a gun. I think is what you asked. And yeah, Lamp could make more bullets if he wanted to. What was it? Oh, I was in the middle of ending the stream, wasn't I? Right, because I need to rest my throat. Oh. Well, that was a fun little diversion. Thank you for showing up, Ivy. You've completely taken my mind off whatever I was thinking about before, and now I'm thinking about other different stuff. Which I think is good, because I don't think I was enjoying the stuff I was thinking about before. And I'm also not enjoying the stuff I'm thinking about now, but like, in a way where I'm like, well, maybe I could change some of that stuff, which I guess is better, I think. I assume. Anyway. But yeah, thank you for being here. I do genuinely appreciate all of you for showing up and hanging out and talking, and yeah. Yeah, but as always, I don't think I've got anything more to say, so unless you've got any questions or whatever, I guess we'll call it here. And yeah. Ta-ra.